Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillahi. We wanted to start to close off the night and make this the last live of the day. We have different categories of zakat. Zakat is for different purposes. And one of the categories of zakat that we have is mu'allafat al-qulub. And what that means is that Islam had noted that there may be some people within the community that they may be a little unstable with regard to their commitment to the deen. And so to extend to them support, to strengthen them, is something that is allowable, right? And part of that issue is for the alignment of the heart. It's different. It's not necessarily to buy them off, because that's not the issue, but to create the conditions which their heart can settle and incline for, to Islam. And so in theory, social work and counseling, what it does is it allows the people who engage in it to function in that capacity. Because we have to realize that in the past, you had a community to operate in. You had a community to be a part of. You had a community that people belonged to, and if there were people that were struggling, if there were people that were struggling, then they would be struggling in the context of that community. And so the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they would utilize zakah to align the hearts, especially for those who had recently come into the deen, or they were struggling with the issues that may not make them firm. And so we have to look at counseling and social work as a form of mu'allafat al-qulub. It's a form of effort that's given in the community, especially to people that are struggling with their deen. Is a form that's given not only for the sake of alleviating the situation of a believer, but for mu'allafat al-qulub. And that's why it has to be done properly. When you take it to be solely a service, the way that social work is taken in the general community, then you don't take real responsibility for that person's well-being. But when you take it from the angle of you're looking at that person and their suffering and their struggling and where they really stand at with the deen, we're talking specifically about those who are struggling with their deen. Then social work will involve the issue of seeking for them housing, seeking for them maybe employment, seeking for them food, alleviating their conditions. That becomes a form of implementing the concept of zakah li mu'allafat al-qulub. Counseling is the same thing. When you take the time to be there for someone in their suffering and in their grief, where they feel as though they may be tested by Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala, and they feel as though, why me? Versus saying, engaging with them in that time, versus saying, you're being tested, brother, and then you just walk away like some people do, or make dua and you just walk away. Part of giving zakat in that moment is taking of your time and, if necessary, your wealth and your resources, and creating an environment where that person can feel the rahmah of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala, can feel a sense of support, and that in itself creates an environment for mu'allafat al-qulub. Sometimes what happens is that people consider mu'allafat al-qulub in this time period aligning the hearts or softening the hearts. Sometimes what they feel is though, in today's mindset, I give you money, I just walk away, like, work on your issue. And so the concept of mu'allafat al-qulub as a category of zakat is something that's not even hardly practiced. Even in our services, even when we're doing counseling and when we're doing social work and all that, and even relief work, It's not at that level of really investing in the human being. That's what, it makes the difference between someone who's committed to the da'wah and someone who just comes in and volunteers with no commitment. Or someone can be paid to do it as a job with no real commitment from the heart. Mu'allafat al-qulub, softening and aligning the heart so that people incline to the deen when they're struggling, when they may not be firm. And this is part of the problem that we have in da'wah, is that people come into the da'wah scene, they come into it not fully committed, they come into it as a hobby, or they come into it wanting to be an authority, or they come into it wanting to show their prowess, and they end up pushing people outside of the deen. That's why we have to have a right conception of what we're doing. Mu'allafat al-qulub, softening and aligning the hearts so that those people incline to the deen, especially when they're struggling. Taking out the extra time to listen, to check up, to be there. Trust me, it's a lot of work. I know. It weighs heavy. It adds on to your burden, to your problems. But Mu'allafat al-qulub is really investing in a Muslim community. And even if you treat others like that are not Muslim, is investing in human beings. And it's something that stands with Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. The concept of Mu'allafat al-qulub. Being there for a person, helping to align the hearts so that they incline towards good in the general sense, and in the more specific sense when we're talking about dealing with the Muslim community specifically, which Mu'allafat al-qulub is designed, is to incline the hearts, right, by being there and making a person's iman firm. We have to look at that concept, look at the spirit of it. What is the spirit of Mu'allafat al-qulub, of aligning and softening the hearts so that people incline toward the deen? It's a category of zakat. Sit with it, reflect upon it. How do we practice it? Remember that it wasn't always the case that people gave cash money. That's part of the problem in today's time, that people have made deen commercial. So they either think they can buy influence on the political front, or they think they can own someone with money and get loyalty in that way. I've heard brothers say that. Unfortunately, they have that mindset. You actually think that you can... What happens if somebody outbids you, buddy? If they give the person more money, then do you still have loyalty? Common sense. Loyalty is not gained like that. You may have sway, you may have influence or sway influence over someone with money, but to buy loyalty is questionable. And if you have that mentality in the deen, you have a problem. And unfortunately, that's what some of our brothers and our sisters, they think when they deal with the deen and money, they think it's about buying people. And it shows the conditions of the heart and the spirit of understanding, and is, meant to offend if a person takes it like that and doesn't want to correct themselves. We're not in the business of changing Islam to a commercial enterprise for power venues or power pursuits. We're talking about human beings in human life. In any event, Mu'allafat al-qulub, softening the hearts and aligning the hearts. We can argue, that social work and counseling comes under that concept. Again, in social work, what are you doing? You're finding a person space, you're finding a person resources to facilitate for them. So if you find a Muslim that's struggling with their deen and struggling with those issues, that becomes an opportunity for Mu'allafat al-qulub. The same thing with counseling, like we said. Someone can feel that their marriage is taking them out of the deen, but taking out the time to listen to them and to be there and supportive and to demonstrate to them that, know that they're not alone in the struggle, that's a form of Mu'allafat al-qulub. Because people tend to be rocked by these types of circumstances, losing a job, marriage on the brink of destruction, losing a relative or a friend or loved one, so there becomes an opportunity to engage in Mu'allafat al-qulub, especially when you see that the person's iman is rocked and they may be drifting away from the deen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.